Hello, everyone. Welcome back to WTF Walk the Floors, All Things Hospitality Training Podcast. I'm Michele Kline with Kline Hospitality, and I'm here with my co-hostess, the wonderful Stephanie Ledger with First Rate Hospitality. Stephanie, how are you today?
Great. How are you, Michele?
I'm doing fantastic. I know we have someone very special here with us. So do you want to tell us who that is?
Yes. Well, first off, we're so excited that we are celebrating our 40th episode today. Crazy how we're now at number 40. And also, too, it's so exciting to have George Polyard here with ComOps. Sponsoring our episode, and we're so excited to have him on as our guest speaker. And George, how about if you give our listeners a little bit about your background and also too about ComOps?
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie and Michele. Great to be on WTF. Excited to join, and congratulations on your 40th episode. Hope there's many more in the future for you. No, it's great to be on the podcast here. I currently am the VP of Customer Experience for ComOps, which I can talk about in a second, but I have been in the hospitality industry in various forms for my entire career. I started as a dishwasher and a prep cook at a small restaurant. I went to culinary school at CIA in New York, worked at 3 Michelin star restaurant, John George in Manhattan during that time. And then that led me to Las Vegas, where I went to UNLV, and then spent about 5 years working for Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts in their rooms division. And then from there, I was lucky to join Forbes Travel Guide. I spent just over 3.5 years, which Stephanie and I share that in our background, 3.5 years as an executive trainer. So was a dream job, got to travel the world, stay at all kinds of great hotels and help those teams really improve their experience. And through the pandemic, I, as we all did, transitioned a little bit into focusing on the customer experience field. And that is what ultimately led me to ComOps. So really, again, excited to be here. Thanks for letting us share kind of our story, and excited to talk about some WTF moments here in a few.
Awesome. So let's lead right into it too with ComOps. Sure. So why do our hotel listeners need to have ComOps on their property?
Oh, I love the question. Yes. And so ComOps was started just under a year ago, and is comprised of all hotel industry veterans. And our goal is really to support hospitality organizations in areas where they might be experiencing some difficulties or problems. Some of those might be a result of the pandemic, such as labor shortages, but some of them might be issues that might be prevalent, pandemic aside. And so ComOps is focused around 5 key verticals: customer experience and employee sentiment, which I oversee, and then contact center, revenue management, and digital innovation and strategy. And all of those areas we find are areas where some organizations or individual properties might have a gap, where perhaps, let's take revenue management, for instance. If perhaps you're a small independent hotel casino in a remote location, having a really exceptional revenue manager might be cost prohibitive, or it might not be appropriate, where what ComOps can do is can essentially join your team and become an extension of your team, and can both offer consultative services around one of those verticals, or even take it a step further and actually offer operational support. And so in the case of revenue management, we might actually serve as your property's revenue manager to manage your hotel yield and rate setting, et cetera. And the intent is not at all to remove jobs from your organizations, but it's rather to assist where there might be a need. And I mentioned contact center. Contact center is a big opportunity for us. We've seen a lot of properties where they simply don't have enough staff, and they don't have enough staff to answer the phone. And as a result, it's having a big impact on their guest experience. And we have the resources and the technology that allows us to take those phone calls and have them answered by a team that's highly trained. They're trained using standards that we developed in collaboration with Forbes Travel Guide. So we really take service very seriously. And ultimately, it's when I was with Forbes, and Stephanie, I can't recall if you were there when Jerry Inzerillo was at Forbes, but he often used this phrase that at Forbes Travel Guide, they were innkeepers serving innkeepers. And I will steal that a little bit from him, is that that's one of our big selling points, is that we are not another technology vendor, but we all come from the hotel, hospitality, casino industry directly. And so we know, not only we don't know the lingo, but we know what problems you might be experiencing, et cetera. So I hope that was a good little quick overview, a long elevator ride pitch of ComOps.
No, I love it.
And it's 54th floor. That was fantastic, though.
Not bad.
And I love it too how you pointed out, especially for properties that may be in remote areas where they're not having that workforce, or also too of the workforce that has the experience to making sure that they're driving the revenue or providing that elevated customer service for their guests at the casino properties, or even at these large properties as well, where you're able to now be that extension of that property, where now the guest doesn't even know that they are speaking with someone that isn't there in the area. However, with the training that you provide for your staff, making sure that they are able to feel, the guests are able to feel like that employee is here on property.
Completely. And when I first started thinking about some of our approach to, in particular, the contact center, it was almost I was a little, not quite uneasy, but it took a little while for us to all be comfortable with the fact that these might be jobs that would otherwise be on property jobs. But if you actually think about it, the hospitality industry is not immune, and it's not new to outsource, and to outsource with a trusted partner certain components of your operation. I think about valet parking in LA. Is there any property in LA that has their own valet parking team? It's few and far between. They're all contractors. They're all often one company. However, they're all really a part of the team. They wear the same uniform. They speak the same language and culture and values as it relates to the property. And so really, it's not about removing jobs. It's about helping solve a problem that's really, in some cases, crippling the customer experience that we're seeing in many hotels. And one of our larger clients, they just needed help answering the phone. And they said, the folks that were answering the phone, we're going to put them on the front desk so they can be customer facing. They can be making keys and actually assisting guests. And so really it turns out to be a win-win from our partnerships.
You make a great point, George. I have, throughout my career, had the opportunity to be on both sides of the spectrum, on the outsourcing company side and also at the property level. And it truly boils down to, if you have the right vendor where they truly care for the product and the project and the service, and they make it a point where they want to be a part of the team, which is typically the case. When you're on the property side, it is really up to you to open those doors and make that team part of your team. We know of, many housekeeping departments where, like you're saying, you have staffing levels that are below standards and you need to bring people in. And in many instances, as we go in, Stephanie and I both have been in those situations where we go in and do an assessment and we realize that there is a huge disconnect between the property and the staffing team, because they don't feel like they belong. So when you have a team member engagement party, those who are on the property's payroll will get specific benefits out of it, but then the ones that are the vendors will not. So it's truly a gap that needs to be bridged between both
Mm-hmm.
the vendor and the property level. And that is literally how you get the surveys to be flawless, where your guest has no idea, it's seamless, nobody knows that there is someone else who's doing it for you, whether it is behind the phone or literally in person.
And I think now the bridging the component is your remote workers as well. So if they are working from a different location, but they're still invested in, on the property, but now how are you bridging that gap to making sure that they're feeling involved with the team when they're not even on the property as well?
Well, and I think there's a lot that I'd respond to, and I wholeheartedly agree with both of you that, Michele, for instance, we take a lot of pride, but also a lot of time and effort in making sure that our team members, especially in the contact center space, are well trained on the property. And that's pretty foundational, but then that they also feel the culture a little bit. We try to, the particular area that they might be in their contact center, make sure that there's some perhaps promotional materials or even posters to make them understand the vibe and the culture of the property, or even going as far as getting them some swag and some t-shirts and things like that, so that, again, they feel like, even though they're not physically there, that they're still a part of the brand, and they really become passionate about these projects as well. And Stephanie, I would totally agree with you that remote work, we look at how even the three of us connecting today 3 years ago would have been pretty challenging, and we could have done it certainly, but, and of course podcasts happened before that, but it's so common that I think I'm curious to see in 5-10 years in our industry, will we see sales and marketing on property? Will we see accounting on property? Or will those roles potentially move to being remote to save valuable office space in those properties? And that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that the hospitality industry changed my life. And I mean that sincerely. I'm passionate about it. It's the perfect fit for me. And I think that to sustain the industry, properties should be willing to say, you know what, yes, if you're a CRM marketing manager, I think you can work remote. Maybe you come in once a month, perhaps, but I think that there's an opportunity to be progressive to attract better talent using those techniques. That's a whole nother conversation, but I'm curious if either of you have thoughts
most
on
definitely
that.
a whole new conversation. And you know what? We'll bring you on to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm extremely passionate for generations at work. And I continue to pound on the idea that if we are not open, we're going to miss the train. There's this new generation that does not want to be stuck to a specific schedule or location. So if we're able to adapt to that, then we will continue to see our evolution. If we're not, then, but again, that's a whole new conversation.
Completely. But I think even just that little chunk of it, I think is impactful. And I would encourage hoteliers and managers to be thinking about that, because so many other industries already have. And I know that all three of us know people who have left the industry for remote work that's outside of the industry. And so that'll be the last thing I say. I promise, Michele. I'm sorry.
No, this is great conversation. We're always never know where we're going to have the conversation lead to. But I do think this is a great segue to kind of talk about your WTF moment, because you're talking about how, the younger generation of the workforce, really shows their feelings, and when they're not wanting to be there. And so, lead in, Georgia, telling us your WTF moment.
Well, and this is a relatively recent memory, and there's a couple of things to share with you, but one of the services that ComOps also provides is the ability to do a rapid business assessment. And it can be malleable depending upon the situation, but our team, myself included, would come to your property potentially, actually in person, and essentially take everything in. We would have someone stay incognito as a guest. We would look at all your systems, et cetera. And we were conducting this from a guest side. So I was staying at a hotel, a luxury hotel in a big city, and as a guest. And I was experiencing the property during the day, and I was going from a mid-level in the tower up to my room. And so I got on I think it was at the spa level or the fitness center, and there were a couple of other guests going to their room as well. And we go up a few floors, and let's say floor 10, a young man arrives on the elevator, and he's somewhat casually dressed, but he has a name tag on. And the moment I saw him, I knew he was likely doing one of two things. He was walking departures, or he was inspecting rooms. He looked like that kind of style manager, and he had a report from a property management system, and you could tell what he was doing. And he got on 10, he pressed 11 and got out on 11. And now I want to pause. There's a time and a place for an employee to use the guest elevators. Nothing wrong with that by any means. Sometimes you have to. However, there were 4 guests in the elevator. And in my opinion, it was very awkward and strange, because the gentleman got on, didn't look at anyone, pressed the elevator, and immediately got off, like we were completely invisible. And I recall vividly, there was another guest, an older gentleman who was in the elevator, and we both looked at each other and kind of had that WTF moment, because he also knew what was going on. And what went through my mind was, what did that employee need to do? All he needed to do was just look at us and smile, or even say hello or good morning. That would have been great. That would have been acceptable. However, think about if he went a step further and said, "Good morning, everyone. How's your visit? How are you enjoying your stay?" And it wasn't, the WTF moment wasn't about the fact that he was in the elevator. I think, and I hope the two of you would agree with me, that's not a big deal. However, it was that we felt like we were invisible, that we were just completely ignored. And I think that a lot of hotel employees think that the guest wants them to be invisible, that the guest doesn't want them to talk to them. Well, so sometimes they might not want to talk to you, sure. However, they want to know that you're there as the employee, and I firmly believe that. And there's a contrasting kind of quick little story, that there's a luxury brand that really is passionate about how their employees act in public, and they even have a kind of a mantra around it. And when I visited these properties, it's almost a little weird, because everyone you walk by immediately stops and they smile, and you know that you were the priority. And when that happens a couple of times, you quickly realize this is different. There's something in the water. There's something about that culturally. And so I think that I love the acronym, of course, the WTF acronym, but I think that it's a great mantra and a great model for how we should think about things in the hotel industry, and also just in so many of these customer service lessons have parallels elsewhere. But that was what came to mind, Stephanie and Michelle, when you first brought up this kind of prompt. I'm curious if you have any thoughts, or if you've experienced anything like that in your travels.
Always have thoughts.
Sure you have.
You go ahead first, Michelle.
Go, Stephanie.
Michelle, you go.
Okay. So here's the thing. I strongly believe in teaching our team members that once they cross that door from back of a house to front of a house, you are on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we don't know the specifics around why that team member was using the guest elevator. We don't know the specifics around why he was perhaps not in a uniform, or it didn't seem like it was a uniform. Yep. It was rather casual for the expectation of that particular brand. But he was wearing a name tag.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're wearing a name tag, you are on stage, right? It's so crucial. And it's that little tiny thing of making eye contact and smiling, and perhaps you don't go the extra mile, right? If you do, fabulous, because that is service.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a minimum expectation, and what some of these team members don't understand, or even managers don't drive, is it's the human aspect of it.
Mhm.
You know, beyond the expectation of the brand, it's the human aspect of it. You walk around in I don't know, you go for a hike and you get on
Mhm.
a trail. You nod at the people that go past you, or you say hello, you say good morning, you say good afternoon. Are you enjoying your? Why do we not
Great
do
example.
it? Right? It's so simple. So going back to basics
Mhm.
is key. We forget the human aspect when we're caught in that hamster wheel of the day and the whirlwind of the operation and everything that's going on. Because perhaps in that gentleman's mind, he was going from point A to point B. That's it.
Mhm.
Understandable. Yep.
You cannot forget about everything that is around you. There is a
Mhm.
specific environment that was particularly curated for an experience. And now that tiny interaction with someone in the elevator broke the entire momentum that those people in the elevator, or even you,
Mhm.
unlucky for that poor gentleman that it was you that was in the elevator, right? But at least you could provide the brand with some feedback.
Yep.
But it's like we forget that teeny tiny human aspect of things.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And not even the human aspect. Now going to talk about the technical side of it, is why is he was going up one floor when, especially, we all know if you're
I
walking
thought we were not
departures.
talking about the elevator. You want to go there? Let's just go there. Let's do it. Come on.
Yes.
Why?
So,
Why one floor?
you
Clearly,
walk.
there was a staircase. Yep.
Yes, exactly. You start on the top floor and you work your way down of using the staircase. Also, too, I was taught very early on that if you're using the elevator, it was going up more than 2 stories, or if you're going down more than 3, then you would be able to use the elevator. But yes, to going just one floor, I would be more mad at that, of being like, really? And I even did it, when I was a leader in housekeeping, I would ride on the elevator just up and down, and I would catch the staff trying to use the elevator, the guest elevator, when we had perfectly 2 actually working service elevators, but they knew that those guest elevators were faster. And so then I would be on there. They would think they would be able to go in there, and then I would be there. I'd be like, oh, what are we doing today? And surprising them, and they wouldn't even know what to say.
Plus, let's face this, it is the perfect way to stay in shape.
Yes.
When you're in housekeeping, it's the perfect way to stay in shape. You start at the top, you make your way all the way down, walk around the corridors. Don't use the elevator.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we were
I would
talking
have
about
to
Totally
say it's,
there.
probably.
work-life balance. Yeah, you in the hospitality industry, you don't need to go to the gym or exercise. You get it during your day. So there you go.
Yeah. It would always be
Absolutely.
funny of, like, with the closing of the rings, and you would have your friends of, like, competing and then always beating them by, like, lunchtime, because they're
Mhm.
always sitting at their desk. And then in housekeeping being like, oh yeah, I'm already done.
Yeah. Well, and
Well,
another kind of thing that I'll mention, that in thinking about sharing this story with the two of you, that where my mind goes now as a customer experience practitioner, and dealing with surveys and signals and things of that nature, is that if you are a hotel general manager, or maybe sometimes a guest experience manager, learning manager, that might have influence on your survey program, are you measuring things like this, that are values that you want to instill in your team, and you also can measure using your customers? And
Wait,
I
are
might
we talking about using the guest elevator, or are we talking about not interacting
simply acknowledging the guest. So
or
if
both?
or both even, and
Because the other one falls under process improvement, right?
completely,
We're
completely,
eliminating waste.
completely. So are you measuring what you expect from your team? And what I would kind of think is, okay, are we anything that falls into this category. And Michele, you brought up that this could be a couple. Could that be a question in the hundreds of surveys that we each get when we travel? Like, could it be a question of, did the staff recognize you during your visit while you were in the public areas? And it, of course, could be NA if that doesn't apply. But imagine if you then had that metric to rally your team around. So often the metrics in a customer experience program are a little bit broad. And how likely are you to recommend, or overall, how was your restaurant experience? But imagine if you had one question a month that was super targeted on something like this. And so I might encourage as well the folks out there who have influence in a survey like that to think about, could we be measuring something like this? And that's just another kind of thought that came up during this conversation.
And I think first, to be able to measure it internally is when you're walking the floors. Are you, as internally with your staff members, your coworkers, are you acknowledging each other? Or are you really just on your cell phone walking down or ignoring? And then if you're seeing that internally already that's happening, then you could just imagine what's not happening to the guests. But it all starts with walking the floors, getting out of your desk, to being like, oh, I'm just going to add this to the survey. But be aware of your surroundings and knowing what opportunities are happening out there.
Completely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So people go out there and walk the floors, managers, supervisors, leads, anyone who wants to become that leader, go out there and walk the floors. We are leaving so many opportunities on the table.
Well, this was great, George. Thank you so much again, and having ComOps here and being able to explain it to our listeners and viewers. And where could our audience be able to connect with you and find out more about ComOps?
Sure. I would definitely say comops.com is the hub, and then ComOps on LinkedIn. We're fairly active on LinkedIn with articles and posts of that nature. But happy to engage with anyone if there's any interest to continue this conversation. But Michele and Stephanie, thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. Perhaps there's a round 2 in the future to talk about virtual work for hospitality. But I appreciate what you're doing for the industry. And here's to maybe 400 more or 40 more or many more episodes.
Sounds good. We'll add a 0 beside it. Thank you so much, George, for being here and enlightening us with your perspective. Stephanie, it was great to see you, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.